King Mswati III, ruler of Eswatini in southern Africa. You've never heard of either of them? Yet Mswati is incredibly wealthy. So wealthy, in fact, that he is the richest monarch in Africa. He has numerous sports cars, palaces, and a private jet, the whole package. And all this in one of the poorest regions in the world, where the vast majority of people live in absolute poverty. Today, we'll take a look at where all this money comes from, and what Coca-Cola has to do with it.
Who's the boy that asks all the questions, explains the world to you and makes you laugh? Who shows you things you don't know yet? Everyone knows it's Prometheus.
That's me. Eswatini, a small strip of land between South Africa and Mozambique, 120 miles by 80 miles in size. About 1.2 million people live here. You may still know Eswatini by its old name, Swaziland. But in 2018, King Mswati III himself renamed it. For simplicity's sake, I'll just call him Mswati, because honestly, how many other Mswatis do you know? Officially, this was to distance itself from the colonial era. Until 1968, Swaziland was a British protectorate. But if you ask me, Mswati, Eswatini, it's pretty much the same thing, right? Anyway, the country has always been a monarchy. And as the world keeps turning and everything continues to evolve, democracy has also spread more and more in Africa. Well, except in Eswatini, Africa's last absolute monarchy. Mswati has been on the throne here since 1986, when he was only 18 years old. And when you look at how he rules, you might think he has one or two role models from the past. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Mswati is, of course, not just a king. He is a legislator, the supreme economic actor, the absolute moral authority, and the owner of large parts of the country. Polygamy is permitted in Eswatini. Who would have expected that in a country ruled by a megalomaniac? Anyway, the king is said to have at least 16 wives and over 30 children. Many of his marriages were concluded in the context of Umhlanga, a traditional festival. Thousands of young women dance there in front of the royal house, a ritual that is officially justified on cultural grounds, but in practice, repeatedly provokes criticism. For the king, it's a kind of fashion show, only with women instead of fashion. You get the picture. Mswati officially rules together with his mother. She bears the honorary title, the Elephant, while he himself is called the Lion. More for the symbolism than for his mane.
What did you do that for?
But what would being king be like if no one noticed that you were king? Right? Only half as much fun. That's why Mswati has several palaces throughout the country, a diamond-studded suit, watches worth millions, and over 130 luxury cars. By the way, that's not a car collection. He bought them all at once in 2019. And of course, a real king needs a throne, made of pure gold. Anything else would be ridiculous. When he travels around the country, he does so in a motorcade, protected by the military. Official estimates of his fortune range from $50 million to $200 million. But it's safe to assume that the real figure is many times that. And of course, a king needs a people. You have to have someone to boss around. While the king lives in luxury, everyday life for many people in Eswatini looks a little different. More than half of the population lives below the poverty line. We're talking about people who have less than $5 a day to live on. Youth unemployment is over 50%. But the good thing about being king is that you can make criticism of the king a punishable offense. Well, and you also own the media, which helps, of course. Eswatini is still in the top 100 in the press freedom ranking. This may be because there simply isn't that much press. Side fact, did you know that North Korea isn't even in last place for press freedom? There's still room for improvement, Kim. Political parties are of course not allowed either. When elections are held, you can vote for Mswati, and somehow that's enough. But where does all the money come from when everyone is poor and unemployed and the whole country feels like it's only the size of 5 football fields? The first thought is always oil or other raw materials. But there isn't actually much of that in Eswatini. What there is, however, is a sophisticated economic system of absolute exploitation. A central component is a sovereign wealth fund, founded in 1968 by King Mswati II, Mswati's father. The fund bears a name that translates as wealth of the nation. Its purpose is to invest in the interests of the country. Officially, that is. Because in reality, Mswati controls the economy and also what happens to the fund. The fund holds shares in sugar companies, construction projects, insurance companies, and even international corporations. And finally, we come to our favorite manufacturer of sugary drinks, which has never actually done anything questionable in its history: Coca-Cola. In Eswatini, the company operates a bottling plant through a franchise, and the Sovereign Wealth Fund holds around 40% of the shares. Every sip of Coke brings cash into the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and thus directly into Mswati's pockets. The company pays out several $million in dividends annually, while benefiting from almost non-existent taxes, low labor costs, and direct access to the country's ruler. It's every multi-billionaire's wet dream. But we digress. None of this would be so bad, because the money from the fund is actually supposed to be used to improve the country's infrastructure and access to education. But what can I say? You remember the private jet, the 130 cars, and not to mention the golden throne. It's easy to calculate how much money reaches the people.
In terms of money, we have no money.
But slowly, the people are no longer as fond of their king as he likes to protest. In 2019, protests broke out after his little car shopping spree became public knowledge. In 2021, nationwide demonstrations followed, mainly by young people, students, and democracy movements. But let's remember, criticism is unfortunately not allowed. Security forces cracked down violently on protesters, resulting in deaths, injuries, internet shutdowns, and a military presence in the streets. That's kind of a thing dictatorial despots who are solely interested in power do, right? Oops, wrong picture. King Mswati is not only an exceptionally wealthy monarch. Over the past 40 years, he has built a system in which political power, economic control, and personal enrichment merge. It is a system that promises stability for investors and produces inequality among the population. A system that magically attracts large companies, while its own people are increasingly excluded. How long this model will continue to work remains to be seen. But as long as the money keeps flowing, Mswati will probably continue as before. But now, as always, I'm interested in your opinion. What do you think about Mswati as the Sun King? And should international companies be allowed to invest in and profit from such a system of oppression with impunity? Feel free to write your thoughts in the comments. Until then, maybe just drink water today, stay healthy, and see you in the next video.
Who's the boy that asks all the questions, explains the world to you and makes you laugh? Who shows you things you don't know yet? Everyone knows it's Prometheus.